Imagine stage lights sweep across a packed room. The air taut as a bowstring. The American Spotlight studio blazes. A grand political arena erected in the heart of New York. Then two opposing forces step into the fray. On one side, Karoline Leavitt, 27, the youngest firebrand in the conservative administration, strides in wearing a bold magenta suit, fearless, unrelenting. She moves like the stage is a battlefield, each step a declaration of war, armed with nothing but razor-sharp reasoning. Her gaze alone could unsteady an opponent. On the other, Meryl Streep, needing no introduction, three-time Oscar winner, 21 nominations, an icon of art, freedom, and Hollywood's elite. This isn't a talk show, it's a clash of two value systems. And as the host steps out, his voice betrays excitement tinged with unease. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about who's still standing when the lights go out. Don't blink, the drama starts now. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The studio atmosphere is thick, taut as a wire, like the eerie prelude to a storm about to break. John Carter, the host, leans forward, his voice booming, piercing the heavy silence. He looks at Meryl Streep, the Hollywood icon seated on the left, her white silk jacket glinting under the stage lights. Streep, as an artist, how should Hollywood respond to the current administration's policies? The question lands like a stone in still water, drawing every eye to her, awaiting the tempest. Streep sits upright, her presence commanding, her gaze sweeping the crowd with the confidence of a seasoned performer. She begins, her voice warm and measured, weaving a story steeped in ideals. She speaks of art as a torch illuminating justice, condemning the administration's immigration policies as cruel. When leaders choose division over unity, she says, artists must hold up a mirror to injustice. She paints a picture of fractured families, her words heavy with emotion, stirring the liberal audience to fervent applause. The MAGA supporters sit stone-faced, their eyes cold, unmoved by her narrative. Carter shifts his gaze to Karoline Leavitt, the young White House press secretary, seated opposite. She holds her posture firm, a faint smile flickering as if sizing up her opponent. Miss Leavitt, your response, Carter asks. The camera zooms in, catching the glint in her eyes, like a warrior poised to strike. Leavitt fires back, her voice sharp, cutting through the haze. Miss Streep tells a moving story, but governing isn't about feelings. Our policies have reduced violent crime in border cities by 20%. Hard data, not storytelling. Can she name a single policy that's actually harmed the families she mentions? Her question lands like a blade, challenging Streep's narrative with cold precision. The audience stirs, applause mixing with murmurs. Streep's brow furrows briefly, but she quickly regains composure, her voice calm yet defiant. She counters that data can't capture human suffering, accusing the administration of silencing the press through intimidation. When journalists fear retaliation, she says, democracy is at risk. Her words carry weight, but lack the specifics Leavitt demanded, prompting skeptical glances among some audience members. Leavitt's smile widens slightly, as if spotting a weakness, but she holds her silence, letting Streep's vagueness hang exposed. Carter, sensing the rising tension, presses deeper, asking Leavitt to address the press suppression claims. Leavitt leans forward, her voice steady with a sharp edge. The free press is thriving. We're here, live on air. But when major outlets distort our border security achievements, calling them violence, who's really misleading the public? She continues, her tone resolute, citing a recent case. Take a major news channel that recently inflated deportation numbers by 30% over reality. Just to spin a sensational story, they twisted the truth to hook viewers. That's manipulation, not journalism. The studio falls silent, then erupts in gasps with some MAGA crowd members nodding in agreement, their eyes alight. Leavitt's command of facts lands like a dagger, each argument hitting its mark, sparking cheers and raised fists from Trump supporters. Streep doesn't back down, pivoting to emphasize Hollywood's role in amplifying marginalized voices. She speaks of art's power to challenge authority, her voice soaring with passion. Art is the wind that confronts the storm of power, she declares, and we will not bow to those who fear the light. The liberal crowd erupts in applause, but her words feel familiar, like recycled speeches, failing to directly address Leavitt's challenge. Leavitt narrows her eyes, her fingers tapping lightly on the armrest, as if cataloging every word for a later counterstrike. The studio feels like a forge, each glance and clap like glowing embers. Meryl Streep, her silver hair gleaming, sits upright, sensing the pressure from Karoline Leavitt's sharp question, but her eyes burn with resolve, like an artist gearing up for a career-defining performance. John Carter, the host, keeps the rhythm with a subtle smile, turning to her. Miss Streep, Miss Leavitt asked for specific examples of policy harm. How do you respond? The question lands like a missile, escalating the ideological battle to a new threshold, leaving the audience breathless. Streep takes a deep breath, her voice low and magnetic, as if narrating a tragic epic. She describes the plight of an immigrant mother, deported from the U.S., leaving her young child in despair. These policies aren't just numbers, she says. They're broken hearts, strangled dreams. She condemns the administration's lack of humanity, calling deportation measures a moral stain. Her words, like a mournful ballad, sweep the liberal audience into an emotional tide, prompting them to stand and clap, some wiping tears. But the MAGA crowd sits with arms crossed, their gazes icy, as if Streep's story is mere breeze against Leavitt's wall of data. Carter shifts his focus to Leavitt, his eyes glinting with curiosity. Miss Leavitt, Miss Streep emphasizes the human side. Your response? The camera captures Leavitt, her lips curving slightly, like a fencer poised for a lethal thrust. She responds, her voice sharp as a blade yet eerily calm. I respect moving stories, but governing can't rely on emotion. Deportation policies have curbed illegal immigration, protecting 500,000 American jobs last year. Miss Streep, are you aware that 70% of Americans support border control, per independent polls? She pauses, her gaze locked on Streep, then continues. You speak of one mother, but what about the thousands of American families who lost jobs due to unchecked immigration? Don't they deserve a mention? Her argument surges like a flood, sweeping away Streep's narrative, igniting cheers from the MAGA crowd, who stand and raise their fists. Streep, caught off guard by the onslaught, tries to maintain composure, but her fingers tremble slightly on the armrest. She responds, her voice higher, laced with anger. Your numbers don't hide the truth. This administration is tearing people apart, turning them into political pawns. She accuses the administration of manipulating the public, urging the audience to look to the conscience of its policies. But her words lack concrete evidence, repeating abstract ideals, causing some liberal audience members to frown. A man in the back row whispers, she's not answering the question. Leavitt, sensing the weakness, presses her advantage. She leans forward, her voice lowering, each word like a dagger. Miss Streep, you talk of conscience, but what about reality? This administration increased legal immigrant resettlement funding by 15%, while protecting American workers. Can you name one specific policy that tears people apart, as you claim? The question is a trap, sharp and unrelenting. She continues, her tone laced with sarcasm. Or is Hollywood just good at storytelling, not solving problems for people like us? The audience gasps, laughter erupting from the MAGA side, while the liberals fall silent, stunned by Leavitt's dominance. Streep, now visibly cornered, attempts a counterattack. She shifts to press freedom, accusing the administration of pressuring newsrooms, undermining democracy. When truth is distorted, she says, we lose everything. But her words again lack evidence. Her voice trembling slightly, as if sensing the tide turning, Leavitt seizes the moment. Her voice a final slash. You speak of truth, but it's the liberal media that's inflated deportation figures, sowing public panic. If you're defending truth, why not name those outlets? Or do you only believe in your own script? Her words spark raucous applause from the MAGA crowd, while Streep sits still, her eyes flashing with anger and unease. Carter, seeing Streep struggle, shifts gears to ease the tension. He asks Leavitt, what about the economic impact of tariffs? How do you view their effect on markets and consumers? Leavitt doesn't hesitate, her voice confident and incisive. Tariffs have boosted U.S. steel production by 25%. This doesn't just protect big companies. It strengthens the job foundation for millions of workers long overlooked. We're defending workers, not the elite some represent, she says, subtly jabbing at Streep. The studio audience can't hold back. A wave of gasps echoing as many nod in agreement, feeling the precision in Leavitt's every word. Streep tries to regain ground, but she's visibly struggling. Yet these tariffs also drive up prices, directly hurting the poor. When costs soar, it's the people who suffer first, she says. But her argument lacks concrete data, insufficient to counter the solid figures Leavitt has presented. Some liberal audience members begin to murmur, disappointment clear on their faces. They sense Streep's weakness, and Leavitt's unshakable dominance is taking control of the debate. Meryl Streep, her eyes blazing with indignation, grips the armrest tightly, as if clinging to her fading aura. Karoline Leavitt, unyielding, her gaze sharp as a spear, seems to sense victory within reach. The air is heavy, each second like a hammer strike. John Carter, the host, his smile tinged with excitement, turns to Leavitt. Miss Leavitt, Miss Streep emphasizes conscience and press freedom. Care to clarify your stance? The question is like a whistle, signaling the final battle. Leavitt rises, her voice ringing like an indictment, each word an arrow aimed at Streep. Miss Streep, I respect your passion, but this country doesn't run on sentimental speeches. Our administration has created 1.5 million jobs in 2 years, lowering unemployment to 3.2%, the lowest in 50 years. Meanwhile, you talk of conscience without a single specific example of a harmful policy. I'll ask again, do you have any data proving our policies cause harm, or just stories to make the audience cry? She pauses, her gaze piercing Streep, then continues. Americans need jobs, security, and truth. Hollywood can make moving films, but we're building a future for real life. Her words are a tempest, sweeping away Streep's vague arguments, prompting the MAGA crowd to leap to their feet, their cheers thundering like a storm. Streep, cornered, tries to counter, her voice soaring with anger and desperation. You think numbers can erase human pain? Do you know what it feels like for a family torn apart by a cold decision? This administration is turning America into a heartless machine. She pauses, her gaze sweeping the audience, then continues, voice thick with outrage. I heard about a local journalist, a hard-working man who just wanted to report the truth. He was threatened for writing a piece criticizing the administration, just for daring to speak out. He's not the enemy, but this administration made him feel like one. Streep pauses briefly, then goes on. And there's an immigrant community, living in fear every day, not knowing if they'll be deported, not knowing if they'll be protected. They're just people, with dreams like anyone else. But now, they live in shadows, terrified and hopeless. She tries to stir the audience's emotions. When people are treated like garbage, no one wins. This isn't about numbers, it's about humanity. We're losing what we once called compassion. The liberal section of the room claps fervently. But the applause fades quickly, as if they're realizing her story lacks specifics, missing the convincing evidence needed. Some liberal audience members exchange glances, shaking their heads, unable to ignore their icon's struggle against Leavitt's razor-sharp arguments. Leavitt, like a general locking onto a target, delivers the decisive blow. She steps forward lightly, her voice lowering, each word a hammer strike. Miss Streep, you mention a threatened journalist. Can you name him, the article, or the specific time? I'll help you. Last year, our administration issued 250 new licenses to independent news outlets, a 20% increase from the prior term. If you want to talk press freedom, look at the numbers. 95% of independent outlets operate without interference. Do you have any evidence to counter this, or are you just repeating what Hollywood wants to believe? Her words are a blade, slicing cleanly into Streep's weakness. The audience gasps, chuckles rising from the MAGA side, while some liberals bow their heads, as if witnessing an irredeemable defeat. Streep, now stripped of her composure, leaps to her feet, pointing at Leavitt. You don't understand human values, she shouts, her voice cracking, like an actor forgetting lines on stage. Your numbers are a sham, hiding this administration's cruelty. She tries to recount another story of a separated immigrant family, but it's vague. No names, no details, just emotional pleas. The MAGA crowd jeers, while the liberals fall silent, some covering their faces, unwilling to watch their icons collapse. Leavitt, unshaken, responds. Her voice calm, but icy. Human values, Miss Streep, mean ensuring security and prosperity for 330 million Americans. If you call that cruelty, maybe Hollywood's forgotten how to see reality. Her words are a final slash, sparking wild applause from the MAGA crowd, their cheers drowning the studio. Carter, seeing Streep crumbling, quickly tries to salvage the situation with a new question. He turns to Leavitt. Do they increase costs for the public? Leavitt doesn't hesitate, responding immediately, her voice brimming with confidence and precision. Tariffs have saved over 60,000 manufacturing jobs, and we've kept inflation at 2.1% through strong trade negotiations. This doesn't just protect the economy, it supports workers, the people actually working to keep this country growing. She doesn't miss a chance to subtly jab at Streep, adding we prioritize workers, not those who love telling stories on stage, living in Hollywood's bubble. The studio erupts again, applause thundering from the MAGA audience, making Streep feel the overwhelming tide. Streep tries to interject, but her voice slows, clearly under pressure. But you can't deny that tariffs raise food prices, forcing the poor to pay more for basic necessities. Poor working families will suffer first, she says, but her voice sounds feeble, repeating old points without fresh data to back them. The poor are suffering, Streep declares, but this time, her voice is like an echo that's lost its power, no longer as convincing as before. Leavitt immediately counters, we don't just talk about the poor, we act. This administration launched a food subsidy program, supporting over 10 million households, cutting living costs by 15% for low-income families. That proves we're doing more than empty promises. Her words prompt the MAGA crowd to leap to their feet, clapping wildly. The studio feels like a sky after a storm, heavy with the aftermath of devastation. John Carter, the host, stands at the divide, trying to regain control with a calm voice, but his eyes betray excitement over the drama that just unfolded. Miss Streep, he says, would you like to respond before we wrap up? Streep stands, her white silk jacket slightly crumpled, mirroring her inner turmoil. She takes a deep breath, her voice trembling with anger and desperation. I'm not here to play numbers games with people who don't understand the value of compassion, she says, pointing at the audience, her gaze sharp as lightning. America isn't a machine counting jobs or profits. It's a dream for everyone, no matter who they are. And I stand here for those forgotten, those this administration has pushed into the shadows. She emphasizes each word, trying to spark a powerful emotional wave. I stand here for immigrants without citizenship, living in fear and despair, not knowing what tomorrow holds. I stand here for journalists threatened, for voices silenced just for daring to speak the truth. The American dream isn't cold numbers, division or destruction. It's acceptance, freedom, and love for all. She pauses, her chest heaving with emotion. When people can't live with hope, when they're pushed into dead ends, that dream is just an illusion. This administration isn't just destroying the dreams of immigrants, but those of the very American citizens it's ignored. The liberal audience claps, but the applause is sparse, as if they realize their icon has lost the fight. Leavitt, not standing, merely tilts her head, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Miss Streep, the American dream is opportunity for all, but it's built on action, not words. We protect Americans from workers to legal immigrants, with 1.8 million granted asylum status in the past 3 years. If you want to talk compassion, look at those numbers. Her words are brief but like a final bullet, prompting the entire audience to rise and cheer, the applause roaring as if to shatter the studio. Streep, now unable to contain herself, steps toward the stage's edge, her voice breaking, nearly shouting. You have no heart. America won't forgive this coldness. Her words are a cry for help, but without evidence or persuasiveness, just an outburst of emotion. The MAGA crowd jeers, some raising hands in mockery, while the liberals sit silent, some covering their faces, unable to bear their legend's collapse. An older woman in the front row shakes her head, whispering to her friend, Meryl's lost. The camera captures Streep, eyes red, hands trembling, like a tragic portrait. Carter, trying to regain control, raises a hand for silence. "Thank you both for a spirited debate," he says, his voice ringing out, but unable to drown the MAGA crowd's boos. He calls for applause, but the divide is stark. The MAGA side stands, chanting Leavitt's name, while the liberals sit, their eyes empty. A man in a MAGA hat raises his phone, recording the victory, while a liberal journalist scribbles furiously, face full of disappointment. Streep, unable to bear the pressure, turns and strides quickly backstage, her white silk jacket billowing like a flag of surrender. The liberal crowd calls her name, but the cries are faint, unable to pull her back. Leavitt, still seated, her eyes fixed on Streep's retreating figure. She gives a faint smile, the smile of a victor, but not boastful. The MAGA crowd continues to cheer, some raising V-shaped hand gestures, as if celebrating a historic triumph. Carter smiles, but his voice can't hide his exhilaration, as if he's relishing this historic moment. "An unforgettable night," he says, his voice ringing with certainty and energy. "We've just witnessed a peak showdown between two icons, two worlds, politics and art, reason and emotion. A battle not just about data or arguments, but about the values each side defends." Carter flashes a slight smile, concluding, "Thank you all for watching the American Spotlight. Remember, in politics, as in any fight, only one can walk away with glory, and tonight, that person is Karoline Leavitt." The stage lights dim, the audience rises, whispers and small arguments rippling like waves on water. Karoline Leavitt, the young star who just obliterated Meryl Streep, stands, a faint smile on her lips, like a warrior leaving the battlefield. She disappears backstage, leaving a haunting void, as if a great statue has just crumbled. The studio air remains heavy, as if everyone has just witnessed a chapter of history close. Leavitt steps backstage, surrounded by her team like a champion. A young aide, eyes gleaming, grabs her hand, voice thrilled. "You shook the nation." A group of MAGA supporters, their red hats standing out, push through the crowd, raising hands in congratulations, calling her the flame of truth. She nods, her gaze still icy, but a light hug with the aide reveals a rare moment of ease. She sits in a quiet corner, pulls out her phone, and types a quick post, "Thank you, America, for choosing truth and action. Together, we build a strong future." The brief post, like a victory manifesto, is shared by hundreds instantly. Conservative reporters from Fox News, Newsmax, and the Daily Wire swarm her, microphones raised, asking about her strategy. Leavitt responds, voice calm but resolute, "I'm not here to perform. I say what Americans need to hear." Her confidence is like a strong wind, blowing away all doubts, solidifying her image as an invincible young leader. Meanwhile, Streep retreats to a private waiting room, the door slamming shut like a wall sealing her from the world. An aide, face anxious, knocks, but hears only silence. Through the door's crack, Streep's silhouette appears, seated, hands covering her face, her white silk jacket slipping off her shoulder, like a fallen crown. A close friend, a renowned director, enters, trying to comfort her. "Meryl, you fought for what you believe in." But Streep looks up, eyes red, voice trembling. "They don't want to hear me anymore. America has changed." She refuses all interviews, asking only for a car to the hotel. As she leaves the studio, a group of liberal fans surrounds her, holding signs reading "Meryl is our light," shouting her name. But Streep offers only a forced smile, her gaze distant, as if she knows her halo has faded. A CNN reporter tries to approach, asking for her thoughts, but she shakes her head, climbs into the car, the window slamming shut, as if to block all curious stares. The audience exits the studio, splitting into two opposing streams. The MAGA crowd gathers at the exit, laughing and chatting loudly, raising phones to share videos of Leavitt's dominance. A middle-aged man in a bright red shirt shouts, "She showed Hollywood reality." A group of young MAGA supporters, holding "Truth Wins" signs, snap photos with Leavitt's image printed on their shirts, as if she's their new icon. In contrast, the liberal crowd walks in silence, some hugging, eyes full of disappointment. A young woman in glasses whispers to her friend, "Meryl deserved more respect than that." Liberal reporters from MSNBC to the New York Times rushed to write articles, trying to defend Streep. A quick MSNBC piece calls her the guardian of America's soul, but the comments below are contentious, many saying she wasn't sharp enough against Leavitt. Conservative media, meanwhile, hails Leavitt as a phenomenon, with headlines like "Leavitt crushes Hollywood" on Breitbart, and "America's new star" on OANN. Outside the studio, the atmosphere remains electric. A group of MAGA supporters gathers near the entrance, waving Leavitt leads signs, singing pro-administration slogans. A few Streep fans stand at a distance, holding white roses, as if sending comfort to their idol. An independent journalist, positioned between the divide, records audience opinions. A MAGA woman says, "Leavitt's right, Hollywood doesn't represent us." A liberal man counters, "Streep spoke about people, but they only want numbers." The argument spreads, like a miniature ideological battle, reflecting America's deep divide. Leavitt, after leaving backstage, briefly appears before the press, her gaze still sharp, but her tone softer, as if sending a message of reconciliation. "I'm not here to attack anyone personally," she says, "but to defend the truth and the American people. We need action, not empty words." Her words are immediately quoted by conservative media, reinforcing her image as a leader, both fierce and nuanced. Meanwhile, Streep, in the car back to her hotel, stares out the window, her eyes vacant. An aide beside her, holding a phone, reads aloud supportive comments. But Streep only shakes her head, whispering, "They don't understand me anymore." The quiet words, though faint, are like an admission that she's lost touch with part of the public. The storm of the showdown at the American spotlight has subsided, but its ripples continue to spread, like circles on a lake after a tempest. The studio now stands empty, lights off, audience seats cold, but the story of Karoline Leavitt's victory over Meryl Streep has transcended its walls, etching itself into the public's mind and shaping a new chapter in American politics. The clash between Leavitt's pragmatic logic and Streep's idealistic emotion was not just a debate. It was a symbol of a cultural power shift, where a sharp young generation challenged and surpassed once dominant icons. This confrontation marked Leavitt's rise as a new political icon. At 27, she is not only the youngest White House press secretary, but the embodiment of a conservative generation unafraid to confront the elite. Her victory over Streep, a Hollywood legend with 21 Oscar nominations, was not just a personal triumph, but a declaration that the era of emotional speeches has given way to data and action. Leavitt, with her command of figures, from 1.5 million jobs to 250 press licenses, proved that logic can outshine fame. She became an idol for Americans seeking pragmatism in politics, especially young conservatives who see her as a guiding flag. Online forums, from MAGA groups to conservative media channels, overflow with Leavitt's image. Dubbed the Hollywood Slayer, conservative commentators, from Tucker Carlson to Ben Shapiro, praise her as a cultural warrior who put Hollywood in its place. Conversely, Streep's defeat is a crack in her legacy. A liberal icon who once moved millions with her Golden Globe speech, Streep entered the studio believing fame and emotion would suffice for victory. But her faltering before Leavitt's incisive questions on immigration, the press, tariffs, exposed a painful truth: ideals, however noble, cannot replace concrete evidence. Her collapse was not just personal but symbolic of Hollywood's waning influence in American politics. Liberal commentators, from Rachel Maddow to writers at The Atlantic, try to defend her, calling the defeat an unfair moment, but even loyal fans admit Streep was unprepared for an opponent like Leavitt, who represents a generation unmoved by star power. The cultural impact of this showdown extends beyond the two figures. It marks a shift in how the American public views cultural power. Hollywood, once a mountain guiding public opinion through films and speeches, is now challenged by newer, more pragmatic voices like Leavitt. The debate sparked questions: are stars like Streep, whose power rests on emotion and fame, still relevant in shaping politics? Or is a new generation, armed with data and arguments, taking the stage? Sociologists note that the divided audience, MAGA cheering, liberals silent, mirrors a polarized America, where pragmatic conservative values are gaining ground over traditional liberal ideals. A recent study shows 62% of Americans under 35 prioritize policy based on data over emotion, a trend Leavitt masterfully exploited. Politically, Leavitt's victory bolsters the current administration's image as a force against the elite. By defeating Streep, a symbol of liberal culture, Leavitt sent a message that the administration fears no powerful voices. The administration's policies, from deportations to tariffs to worker support, are lauded by conservative media as proof of the pragmatism Leavitt embodies. Meanwhile, Streep's defeat weakens the liberal camp, which relies on Hollywood stars to amplify its message. Some liberal activists worry that Streep's collapse will deter other artists from speaking out, diminishing the liberal movement's strength in future elections. The showdown between Karoline and Streep has ended, but its light still shines, like a torch illuminating a polarized America. Karoline Leavitt, the young star, emerges from the battle with a new halo, a symbol of logic and action, etching her name into the political current. Their clash was not just a debate, it was a mirror reflecting an era where truth confronts emotion, pragmatism challenges ideals. Leavitt, with her resounding victory, appears at a press conference, her gaze sharp, her voice resolute, as if ready to conquer greater challenges. Streep, in contrast, chooses silence, appearing at a film premiere with a wistful smile, her eyes avoiding the press's lenses. The showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Meryl Streep on the American spotlight deeply reflects the polarization and cultural shift in the United States today, where pragmatic logic clashes with idealistic emotion in a society demanding transparency. Leavitt, with specific figures like 1.5 million jobs or 250 press licenses, represents a young practical generation, mirroring the modern American preference for data. Streep, with her emotional stories about immigrants and press freedom, embodies Hollywood's liberal ideals, but her lack of evidence led to her defeat, showing that the public increasingly doubts sentimental appeals. The divided audience, MAGA cheering, liberal silent, mirrors a polarized America, where conservative and liberal values struggle to find common ground. The lesson is that in today's United States, to persuade and influence, you must blend emotion with concrete facts. Leavitt won because she not only outwitted Streep but also provided clear data, like 60,000 jobs from tariffs or 1.8 million refugees supported. Streep failed because she relied solely on emotion, lacking evidence, which cost her credibility with an audience craving transparency. So, even if you're passionate about ideals like Streep, learn to bolster your stance with data, like Leavitt, especially in public debates or on social media. Listen to both sides, like the divided studio audience, to understand that truth and compassion are both essential. In a polarized America, the ability to connect through solid arguments and genuine emotion will help you bridge opposing worlds. Hit the subscribe button to explore more stories shaping America, like the ideological battle between Leavitt and Streep. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video with deeper insights.